action. I can't get no call to action, but I try, and I try, and I try.
Hello and welcome to Call to Action, the go-to podcast for anyone trying to make sense of the world of marketing, advertising and beyond. In an industry that is a minefield of utter bollocks, we aim to capture our heroes and allies from the front line to have a chinwag with. It's like Pokemon Go, with the single but vital exception that it's not a short-term bandwagon of shite. It's brought to you by Gasp, and I'm Giles Edwards, co-founder and MD. Today, we've landed ourselves a bumper catch of Rania and Trevor Robinson, OBE. Adland's primo power couple, Rania and Trevor, are CEO and ECD, respectively, of Quiet Storm, a creative marriage of ad agency and production company. Rania has headed up accounts and driven strategy for some of the world's biggest brands, including Haribo, Mercedes, Google and Coca Cola, whilst Trevor is responsible for some of the most talked about advertising of our era, including You've Been Tangoed and Haribo's Kids' Voices. Dedicated philanthropists, they have recently revived Create Not Hate, an initiative helping young people underrepresented in the creative industry to unlock their potential. Welcome to the show, Rania and Trevor.
Hi, Giles.
Hi there.
Right, so quick fire questions. Number one, tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Trevor?
Oh, definitely tea.
Tea, okay.
Chai. That sounds really fancy. It's chai as well.
Nice, why not? Number two, be different or be distinct?
Be distinct.
Yeah, be distinct.
Three, brainstorms or mind bombs?
Mind bombs.
Mind bombs.
Nice, easy. Star Mix or Tangfastics?
Oh, Tangoed. Definitely.
Ooh, that's hard because I like them both. Let's go for Star Mix because I like the little jelly men.
I love jelly men. Green ones preferably.
Yeah. They're worth fighting over those, huh?
Number five then, I know Rania's answer. Salami or Parma ham?
Parma ham for me.
Oh God. I love both. So I don't. I don't. Oh God, that's a tough one. I love both. Depends what mood I'm in. What did you think I was going to say?
I thought you were going to say Parma ham.
I do love Parma ham, to be honest with you, but you know when you put salami in,
I would have said it was salami
it
for
makes
you.
it very competitive. Well, I do like both. I have to say it.
Have you ever heard Bob Mortimer talk about pocket meat?
No, God, that sounds terrible.
It does sound terrible. Meat on the go.
I really love Bob Mortimer and Vic Reeves back in the day. But I think I half remember Pocket Meat, but not that clearly.
I'm a fan. Anyway, two more. This is a Guinness one. Surfer or swim black?
Oh, surfer.
Surfer.
See, I'm a sucker for swim black. But lastly, Beyonce or Black Uhuru?
Oh my God, Beyonce all day long.
Ooh.
All day long for me.
Black Uhuru.
Okay.
Show my age there.
Oh, brilliant. You didn't agree on many there.
No.
Bit of a boring marriage if we did, wouldn't it?
It would be, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. To start Call to Action, we always ask every guest about their path to where they are now, and we find more often than not it's rarely a linear one, which I think really needs celebrating. Could you both start by telling our audience about your first ever jobs, and then what you would regard as your first marketing or creative advertising job?
So my very first job, I was 14 and it was a Saturday job in the chippy, local, like the chip shop. Can't remember, Stobies, I think it was called. And then for my first marketing job, I started off as a kind of receptionist stroke runner at what was called then, I don't know if people use this language really particularly anymore, but sort of below the line agency in Parsons Green. And I was kind of, had a bit of a job to be taken seriously because I hadn't come in the conventional way. And as an agency, they had wanted graduates with 3 years experience before they would consider having them as an account manager, and I obviously had neither of those. And so just had to work very, very hard, and with a lot of, with some good mentors and good support, I managed to work my way into an account management role eventually. There.
And did when you first started there, then, so no doubt it was a lot of hard work to grow into that role and that position. Did you instinctively and immediately feel like it was the right environment to work in?
Oh yeah, I mean, I for me, I've always been very instinctive in how I've made my choices in life, to be honest with you. And I loved the feel of the agency. It was a small boutique independent agency, and actually, I've spent my whole career in independent agencies for good reason, really, because you kind of you can be part of, you can get stuck in, basically. You're not pigeonholed in a specific role when you're in a sort of smaller indie type environment. And I used to type up all the presentations, basically. And that was when, for me, I'd never really had a really clear sense of career direction. I knew I wanted to do something in media or advertising or music or and I kind of got a sense that marketing was probably an interesting area for me. But it was at that point when I used to type up these presentations, and I'd really fall in love with the ideas and the strategy and all the thinking behind it. And yeah, and that was it. That was when I knew this is kind of, I mean, I loved TV ads, so I always kind of used to really enjoy the TV ads back then, but hadn't really realized what the way in was. It was at that point that I thought, yeah, I just love ideas and the thinking behind the ideas as well got me really excited.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of the many ways we could improve young talent coming into the industry is simply an awareness issue. I think I've got two young daughters myself, and when I flick through the many silly, daft, amazing books that they have on their bookshelves, they kind of centre on certain trades and professions which get in far sooner, whether it's a fireman or a policeman or what have you. And I really think that there needs to be some more advertising and magical creative lands.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, particularly if you don't, like you said, if you don't have parents in the industry. Like my mum was a teacher, my dad was a doctor, so I had no real inspiration or kind of way in a way, or that would kind of. I think I'd have got there a lot sooner if I'd had more sort of role modelling or exposure to the industry in some shape or form much earlier.
At the same time, Rania, would you suggest that actually having quite a broad, rounded, or I suppose more kind of wide-ranging experience has benefited you? And the reason I ask is I mentor, or I was going to say he's 30, I'm 40, so to me he's very young, strategist, and I made the same point to him earlier that when you are in an independent agency, in my experience anyway, I've always preferred those who come from quite an eclectic background rather than those that have perhaps been much more linear and their career progresses through the kind of same corridor without that world experience.
Definitely. I mean, for me, for the role that I do now, which is a kind of chief exec role, the fact that I've done a lot of these roles in my career over the years, I've done production, I've done account handling, and I've done planning, and the fact that I've kind of can understand those three areas, I think has made it really, much easier for me to do my job as a CEO, because I can. I intimately understand what it takes to do those jobs. And whilst it's moved on, things have moved on, and it's very different. I've got that kind of deeper understanding and recognition and appreciation for those roles in the business and what they do and the contribution they can make in the overall process. So I think so, definitely. And I wouldn't have got that exposure had I not worked at an independent, because I worked at agencies where you, as the account person, had to do the planning on your account, and I think so that naturally led me into a strategic role later on in my career, and equally, account handling roles where you had to get stuck in and get involved in the production side as well. And I don't think that would happen in a big, more classically structured organisation, whereas it happens all the time in an independent agency, particularly a fast-growing one where opportunities come up and you can't resource them quickly enough, and people just get stuck in, basically.
Yeah, before you know it, you need to define a new job role for whoever did that bit that someone just did.
Yeah, exactly.
Trevor, can I come to you as well and ask about your first ever job and how that evolved into an advertising job?
My first ever job was I used to do sort of like bobble jobs locally and just do anything that people wanted me to do, from cleaning out their shops basement to cleaning their cars and stuff like that, like most kids did. And my week-to-week job, first one, was Tesco's, where I used to pack the shelves. Not very successfully because I've never been any good at anything that I can't. That bores me. So I think I lasted for about a summer, and then I freelanced as an illustrator, a court artist at one stage when I was at college, and used to design book covers. You know, the illustration for book covers. The court artist I did, Jeremy. What's his name? Oh,
Jeffrey Archer.
Jeffrey Archer. That's it. I still got the illustrations to prove it. Wasn't a very nice man. And then I got my first serious job was in Richmond, a company called Samuel and Pierce, where I was like a sort of junior designer, creative. It was very depressing, but I did meet my creative partner Al Young there, and I persuaded him to leave with me and venture into the West End, which took us over, I guess, about a year and a half to get into a decent West End agency. But that's where I all started off doing pile creams in brochures.
Nice.
Very nice.
Nice. I had no idea that you were a court
Yeah.
artist. And so that background of being the court artist, and obviously you were doing illustration and book covers and so on and so forth. Did you make, like I know many people do, did you make that sidestep, if you like, from a more fine art type, I suppose, pursuit or interest, then discover the world of advertising? Or did you know that you wanted to somehow get into that world already?
I think I stumbled into it, to be honest, because when I was at college, for some reason I didn't get a grant, so I had to pay for it off my own bat, and I got myself terribly in debt to pay for my exhibitions, portfolios, and all that. And coming from a working class background, you can imagine how much money that was. So I was desperate to get a job to get out of debt, really, and get out which I did move out of my home, but it was a real struggle. And I got two opportunities. One was an animation company, which I must admit, I was more excited about getting. And the other one was the job I mentioned, Samuel and Pierce. And the animation company didn't take me, and I went the other way. But then I got kind of a bug for advertising. Those guys there was obsessed with campaign and obsessed with advertising at this little advertising agency, and they seemed to know everybody like they were heroes and stuff. And I've always, like Rania said, I grew up in an era where ads were brilliant. You know, it was the Heinekens, it was the Benson and Hedges campaigns. It was like Silk Cut. There was lots of brilliant ideas that you'd go into school to have you seen and mimic and stuff like that. So I grew up in that era. I just didn't think I could come up with ideas day in, day out. You know, I couldn't imagine how hard that would be. But I managed to realize I was quite good at it, probably at college. And I definitely felt it when we were going around with our book.
It's interesting you made the point there of the ads, of the Silk Cuts and the Benson and Hedges, and I've heard you speak or mention before the Carling ads and how it kind of bled into culture and society and specifically schools. Of course, you've gone on to make ads which I have first-hand experience of experiencing in schools. I've certainly remember being Tangoed.
Oh, really?
When I was about 12 years old. Like, that's really kick-started off. Was it that link with actual production? So obviously you had that interest from the animation side, and previously I said obviously with the illustration and actual doing, and the ideas and the creativity and the advertising side that led to you starting Quiet Storm in 1995. I mean, I appreciate there's many years there that I've just sort of leapfrog, but was that part of it?
I blend them myself. Yeah, I mean, like, because I just always, like, I love film, and Rania could tell you, bore you to death with the amount of films I've watched, and my brain is kind of designed that way. I can regurgitate films and scenes, and you know, when I'm directing, I find I almost don't know where it's coming from, because I kind of go, I can't remember or hold on to most things. And again, Rania could tell you about how complacent I am in life, but something with ideas and films, it just sticks with me. And I grew up in an era where the directors really didn't care that much about advertising. They just did it to make a bit of money, and they were slightly embarrassed about saying they did an ad. and they were more looking forward to doing a feature film or even a promo. And we used to, sometimes work for a year, 6 months, trying to win a piece of business, get it through research, get clients to tick it off and buy it, and then you give it to these very matrix-looking guys who sit with their dark sunglasses and long coats, and they basically didn't care, and the work would come out. And when you see ads on the TV, and you go, well, I can see there's a good idea there, but I really, it's somewhere lost in translation. And I always used to blame it's because the people directing it didn't care, didn't understand, and didn't like ads particularly. So I thought, if I wanted to set up a system where the creators can write and direct their own work. And I know there was a lot of brilliant directors like Frank Budgeon, who are ex-creatives who went over to being directors, and even Tom and Walt, who did the Guinness work, I think is one of the best creators that's ever lived. And they stopped being, advertising creators and just become directors. And I always thought that was a shame. And I always wanted to do both. So that's why I wanted to set up Quiet Storm in the first place. Also, it was also the way production companies are a little bit more friendly, I would say, than creative agencies. And people are really excited about working together. And so I'd like to think our planners and our account guys have a better relationship with clients and with their fellow colleagues than other agents. I can't compare that now because I've been running my own place for so long, but that was one of the reasons that I really liked running Quiet Storm, because you're able to change the way people perceive the client and use them, as it were, to get the best work out there.
Yeah, it's interesting. It makes complete sense as well. You identified a link that was perhaps broken there. And it was more of a box ticking exercise for the directors and the production guys to get something done while they were secretly dreaming of doing feature films. Is that something that still exists? Do you both think outside of Quiet Storm? Because there are other areas which seem to have been decoupled, perhaps, when you compare it to agencies of a few decades ago, even something as, broadly speaking, as media and creative.
I think there's lots of businesses now. Agencies have got production in-house, or they've got production as part of their network, set up. But I think what is still quite unusual from our understanding is where the creatives, when it comes to above the line and classic TV advertising, not content, necessarily, but where you've got a creative who's come up with the idea and also directed it, that is still quite unusual. As far as we know, there's not that many businesses that have all the kind of classic creative agency kind of capabilities in the way that we do, and can also then go on to have the same people coming up with the ideas actually directing them. So, but I mean, we might not be the only one, but we're certainly one of few versus one of many. But yeah, of course, most businesses now have some, AV production capability, probably, whether that's just at, a certain level or right up to TV. But I think you probably, most agencies that we compete against will be putting their TV advertising out to a production company. And if not, they won't necessarily have the creative who came up with directing it. So that's still quite unique. I think, working more collaboratively and bringing clients into the process more, and, being more lean and agile and all that sort of stuff, I think is something that all businesses have to do now, to be honest with you. But I do think that bit is still quite unusual, the other bit.
Do you think that perception still exists, though, where you might have directors outside of your team? Do you think you still have directors who might not have the same appreciation of directing an ad versus doing a feature film? Or is that just the age-old issue of creative people?
Well, I can't really comment on that, to be honest, because, like I said, we're not working for that old school setup. I would say that it's all about vision, and it's about sensibility. And if you've got a vested interest in this idea and you want that idea to escalate by bouncing off new and fresh minds, but it's your idea and you understand why the importance of it, and you understand the nuances of the advertising side to it as well. Because some directors are absolutely brilliant at bringing a vision to life, but they really don't know or even care that much about selling. And I think that's something fundamental. And I believe that why people remember the name of the commercials that we've been involved and the ads ideas that we've been involved with, because we hold that up on a pedestal. People don't go, have you seen the commercial, when they talk in kids' voice, they say, have you seen a Haribo ad? So that for us is incredibly important, and it helps with selling, and it's something that we have a perception of and an understanding for, an appreciation for, that I think some directors might not have. I might be throwing a sweeping statement there. They might all turn around and go, "Oh, we love ads and we love selling."
But I think also they've not been involved. They don't understand. They haven't got that kind of relationship with the client or with the brand, or that real understanding of the kind of intimate understanding of the strategy and the and all that kind of stuff, which you have from when you're involved from start to finish. So you can't expect them to be
Yeah,
honest with you.
no, it's only fair. Yeah, I mean, they don't have to be there at pitch stage. You don't have to be there at trying to sell an idea through, and they're not there when you're having to present that to the client, and and when you're having to go through edit suites, when sometimes when they've already left after their first cut, you're getting the sound, you're getting the music, you're getting it through. And to have that intensity of that, having somebody who's all over it all the way through, I think is super important.
Is that part of the success behind the Haribo Kids Voices campaigns that you just referenced there?
Oh, I'm not sure if it's that really. I think it is. I think we have a really great connection with our client, and like I met Herwig. Actually, we've been doing the campaign for 7 years, but I had met Herwig previously at Swartz, and he allowed us to pitch for the Haribo campaign. And I think he's always been that kind of client where we're friends, but it's mainly about, are we doing a job for them? Are we making his life easier? And that means, like, he's the top dog worldwide in Haribo now because of the campaign. The campaign's gone worldwide. And I do believe the reason why is our relationship with the client, but also our understanding of the brand and nuances of the brand, the importance of having it's real kids talking, and it's recorded real kids first, and then we write a script for it. Which is a very unique way of going around. It's not many times when you come up with the words first, and you come up with a scenario, and then you sell that to the client. And you do need a unique understanding and trust with the client when it's that way around. They're buying into a dialogue as opposed to an idea.
But I also think when you're coming up with the idea, you understand how to execute it in the way to get the best result as well. So conceptually, so I think it's a really important point that Trev makes there, and he used the word script, but actually is unscripted. But you use what the kids say to then inform what you end up shooting. So they'd figured that out before, and we did it. We did a test shoot to present the idea to the client, because it's quite difficult to tell a client you've got to buy an idea, but there's no script yet. We haven't got a script, by the way. We're going to wait and see what the kids say. So we had to do a little test film for it, and that stuff you can do when you've got in-house production and you are the people you've got a director's mindset, so you know exactly how to make that idea work. Because we actually, at the time that the first ad launched, there was another ad out at the time that had used a similar mechanic of kids' voices, but theirs was scripted, and you can really tell the difference between the two ads, and it just didn't work with the scripted. And so again, you would have had someone write a script and then hand it to a director, whereas if you're doing both jobs together, you kind of know that actually it'd be better unscripted.
At the time as well, it came out, and that other campaign came out, and people was going, "Oh, look, they've ripped off the Haribo ad badly." So,
there you go.
Double slap.
Well, hats off to you for that campaign, because it is absolutely wonderful, and especially hats off to you from my daughter Annabelle, who's only 6 years old, and that's one of two ads that I can just see the joy on her face when she actually sees.
Oh, that's really nice to know that. Yeah, it's good.
You're competing with the Weetabix submarine, though. I'll have to give that credit to. She, for some reason, that really gets her. But actually, I made a point on a previous episode. I was fortunate enough to finally get hold of Bill Bernbach's book. And when I was flicking through it for the first time, she came and sat next to me on the sofa, and without really understanding any of the context, and of course, most or if not all of the brands or the brief or any of that detail, she started chuckling at a few of the compositions. And to me, that was just like magical to see. And I think it's so easy. And people in Adland are very guilty of living in bubbles, obviously. But when you see an ad like Haribo actually being received by people who not only aren't associated with the industry, but probably couldn't give a toss about it anyway, and actually seeing it have an effect, that's when it just feels so great.
I always think that's the biggest barometer for me. And like Round's heard this before, but my brother's a great example of someone who cares very little about advertising. And he probably, the ones that he does care about, he will approach me and go, "Oh, Trev, did you do that?" Would most of the time knowing full well I didn't do it. And I would have to turn around and do it. It's really pleasing when he comes to me and goes, "Did you do that?" And I go, "Yeah, I did." Like, I remember there was a Create Not Hate campaign that we did recently with the Romeo and Juliet campaign. And my brother sent it to me on WhatsApp and go, "Oh, you got to watch this. This is brilliant." And I went, "Yeah, we did that." And he was like, so for me, I'm with you on that. Like, it's incredibly nice to get plaudits from your client. And obviously, it keeps us all in business. And also winning awards and all that, that really helps us be seen as a good agency and we do good work. But I always think the best barometer is people out there. And if they don't like it, and if they hate your work, or if they do like it, you're doing something right.
Yeah, well said, well said. You mentioned Create Not Hate there. Can you tell our listeners a bit about Create Not Hate? Because I had the pleasure of talking to Jess Gregson recently, the wonderful Jess Gregson, and we gave it a bit of airtime, but I'd like to give it some more, and also hear it in your words, if I may.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ryan could really elaborate this on a mechanical side, because she really has made it something that's quite viable, and something that, because when I first came up with it, it was a frustration that I found when I first came into advertising, that yes, there's a lot of bright, intelligent people in advertising, but it just felt like it was coming from one sector of society. And you could see from Brexit, that's a real mistake, because if you don't get what the outside world and it can bite you in the ass. And I was also really aware of where I grew up. There's some incredibly talented, bright people that I knew just didn't know about advertising and haven't had a long and fortunate career that I've had. And I also thought, not only is that a lack for them, but it's a loss for advertising, because I know what I brought to the game, but I also know how many other people that didn't get involved, and like, whereas the other industries are all seeming to reap the rewards of having truly diverse people working for them. And so the people that are coming up with the idea understand the target audience, and also it's a lot more. You've got a lot more of a spark of creativity can happen when you've got people from different backgrounds that take the same information and come up with different things. And I always think me and Al was a perfect example of that. He's from Scotland. He's well educated, Edinburgh chap, and I'm from Clapham, the streets and all that. And I think it was that clash of personalities and cultures, but finding each other both excited about coming up with ideas that allowed us to come up with ideas like that. So when I started to do Create Not Hate, that was my intention, to try and bring some kids from less fortunate backgrounds or diverse background places where I come from, and try and get them into advertising, to try and give advertising a little bit of a kick in the arse, and show these kids that there's lots of different, like the subject matter you guys were talking about earlier, that they would not know about advertising, and they would not know about the possibilities that could happen in it. And I started off with using knife and gun crime as a subject matter. I went back to my old school, but I was a bit stupid and naive when I first started. I thought I could do this all off my own back, and people would see the output. And we did an amazing film, and I tried to get as many people in. Like Dennis is one of McGanfrey. He's one of the guys. He's just done a feature film recently, funny enough, and he's worked with Idris and. He was a gang member when I first met him, or ex-gang member, I think he was. And he started producing and he co-directed the film with me when we started. Now he's doing really well. But this time around, especially after George Floyd, and I was like alongside a lot of people wanting to try and do something. And we decided we're going to try and revitalize Create Not Hate again, using racism as our subject matter, which everybody was talking about at the time. And so that was a good thing to get the kids to talk about and deal with. Ron, do you want to take the...
Yeah, I mean, I think it was like timing is a really important thing in any, I think Trevor was way ahead of his time back in 2007. The industry wasn't really ready for it. There wasn't that kind of recognition that we have now, that diversity is important. And yeah, it was just the timing felt right. And this time round, we've got the support that we were hoping to have got all those years ago, to be honest. But we're happy that that's now getting traction. We've tackled, since then, we've worked with an organisation called Shout, who have a mental health texting service, where we were specifically targeting young Black boys because they're most at risk. They have, as you can imagine, a lot of the kind of social sort of issues and challenges that impact on self-esteem and mental health, and are probably the least likely to, they are the least likely to kind of necessarily come out and ask for help. So we've done that, and we've also looked at Stop and Search. We recently did a Stop and Search film as well, and when we're doing some brilliant work with John Lewis at the moment as well. So it's getting the traction now, and and we've also done some work with Media Trust as well, where we've done some live kind of briefs with Vimto and stuff like that. So yeah, it's kind of got the momentum that it kind of needed, and it's been like, and the anti-racism campaign that we developed last year reached 500 million people. I mean, it got a huge amount of reach with zero investment, and I think that's testament to the level of support that this is now getting, which is brilliant.
That's amazing. Can you just explain how people can support Create Not Hate?
Yeah, I mean, well, we've got a GoFundMe page, so they can literally, if it's just individual contributions, they can go on and make a contribution. If they're in the industry, we're always looking for mentors and agencies who can participate, who can provide people and resources, and then brands. Obviously, we would love the opportunity to talk to any brands as well about running programs in the way that we have with John Lewis as well. So, and they don't all have to be social issues. I mean, the program we're running with John Lewis is celebrating modern Britain, and it's a creative brief. It's not a socially driven brief at all, because that is sort of yes, we've looked at tackling social issues historically, but that's kind of not, it's not just about addressing cultural or social stuff. It's about getting a fresh take from people that have had, like Trev said, different life experiences and different lived experiences, to get to more kind of original thinking, to be honest with you. So it could be anything. It could be any sort of brief, really. But and then obviously again, we've got some brilliantly talented people as well that we're hoping to get placed in the industry as well. So there's lots of different ways people can get involved. So yeah, we've got all our, couldn't tell you what any of them are, be told off, but all our social platforms and all that sort of stuff. And there's ways to get in touch if anyone wants to get involved.
We'll make sure all of the links are added to this show's listing. So if you're listening now, you can see those easily on the episode description. But I'm really pleased you're getting so much traction. And I think that actually, quite sadly perhaps, when organisations try to tackle problems such as diversity themselves, it is often met with friction. I had the huge pleasure of talking to a guy called Doug Melville, whose name you might be familiar with, but he was TBWA's first global diversity officer. And he mentioned to me that one of the traps he sees businesses falling into is they create a diversity department, if you like, and as soon as a business creates a department, everyone else outside of that department sees it as their responsibility to fix the problem and not their own. Yeah. And I remember having this light bulb moment when he first said that to me, and it just made so much sense. As rightly or wrongly, but it did.
No, I totally agree, and I think it's important that it's got to be cemented into your values. It's got to be part of your business strategy. It's got to be like every part of your vision and approach. It can't be just allocated to a division or a department, in my view.
I definitely feel that people have to embrace it at the top right the way through, and not just push it into a little section within the company, because like you said, people just ignore it and think it's somebody else's problem, and it's not a problem, it's an opportunity. And that's what people need to see. It's going to help their business, it's going to help themselves. The more relevance, and I'm forever seeing this one every time I deal with these kids. They're telling me things that I just didn't even know what they meant at first, and I'm seeing that the speed of creativity, the way they can just make something within a couple of hours and put it onto TikTok and stuff. And we're like, it take us about 6 weeks of production and multi meetings before we can do something like that, and that is really important. And I think the advertising industry is still this big closed shop, this big ocean liner that takes a long time to turn around because of the nature of it. And I think it needs to buck up its ideas, I think.
I have a couple of listener questions that I'd like to put to you both. I think we'll do one each. I think that's probably the fairest split. So asking the general public for their opinion, be it on Brexit or boat names, is notoriously fraught with danger, but that's not stopped us asking. So, Rania, if I can come to you first, this question is from Jemima, and she asks, how do you balance running an agency together and your life as a married couple? And how did you find that over lockdown? I have a feeling you'd have answered this one before.
I mean, to be honest with you, surprisingly, I mean, it's getting better and better. If I was honest, we're fine. Like, it was difficult at first. I'm going to be honest, and we've got very lots of similarities. We've got shared values. We you know, and we both have a lot of shared skills in a way, but we just go about them in a very, very different way. So I think at the beginning it was incredibly frustrating trying to, but actually as time's gone on, I think we've just kind of, well, it's a bit like a marriage. After a while in a marriage, you work out how it kind of works and how you respect it. And it's the same with in a working partnership. And I think for me, it gets better and better each year. And Trevor might disagree, but I
No,
think
I
it's
totally
true. I
agree.
think lockdown was surprisingly the maddest thing was the first few months. I think because we didn't expect it to go on for very long, but the first few months of lockdown or weeks of lockdown, we literally sat at the same table working together. We do video calls all together on the same laptop. And like one day we were a bit like, what the hell are we doing this? We wouldn't do this in the office. I wouldn't sit next to you in the office and share a laptop. And it went surprisingly well. I think we would have probably had maybe one or two major blowouts, but it wasn't that kind of, yeah, it wasn't consistent bickering as you'd sort of expect when you
Yeah,
spend that much time with someone.
I think it's. I've realised a lot with relationships as well, with friends' relationships and marriages. Lockdown was a real divider. It was like being sent on holiday with someone and realizing that you weren't compatible or you were. And I think me and Ron, we've always have been, but lockdown, because of this kind of weird world was submerged into, it really made us realize how strong we are together, and it's us against the world, or us supporting each other, and it's us kicking things around and shared frustrations and shared excitements. And that's one of the beauties of running a company together as well. And when you win a piece of business, when you do successful pieces of things that people are talking about, you're truly sharing it with someone. And I think, to me, as well as coming from a world of having a creative partner, it always felt very natural for me. And like I would have Barneys with me and Al, like me and Ron would have arguments. That's a part of it. I think it's not about one of you shouldn't back down so the other person wins. It's about both of your thoughts and ideas are worth thinking about and worth discussing and worth seeing it through. And I think it only makes the work better, and I think it only makes our work environment better. I mean, I think in the past we probably used to Barney more.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, we used to follow it a lot more. I think I've just had to you learn each other's boundaries really, and I think one of the biggest sort of points of tension was that I'm always on, whereas Trev, quite rightly as a creative, needs that time out. And I'd be literally, I'd be talking to him like any given moment. He's brushing his teeth in the morning or whatever else, and I'm chatting to him about work. And I've just sort of learnt to have those cut-off points to go, actually, that kind of works for me. It doesn't work for him, and be respectful of those boundaries. And I think we've just learned communication, isn't it? Better communication. And yeah, so we've been through a lot, I think, as a married couple and as sort of business partners. And when you've been through that much and you still kind of, it breaks you or makes you, doesn't it? And I think I'd say it's made us. So
Well, without forcing any parallels between Gasp and Quiet Storm, I founded the AR agency with my wife Sophie, and I think secretly most of the team here, they see it as one of their highlights of coming to work is seeing us at each other's
Yeah.
throats because we'll challenge each other where others won't.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So,
I think there's been a lot of comical moments for our team as well,
yeah.
embarrassing and awkward moments too. But yeah, but I think I think it saves a lot of time. I think, and I think we tell each other things that maybe other people might not feel so comfortable telling us, and I think that's quite good because we hold each other to account as well. And I'm sure that's the same for you and your wife.
Yeah, we're both very hot-blooded individuals as well. So when it kicks off, it kicks off.
Yeah. Well, I find that very comforting to hear. Thank you.
Well, next time you have any problems, just give me a call.
I will,
Don't
yeah.
listen to him. Don't take any advice.
I'm slightly mindful of time. I think we might have to skip Taryn's question because I've got our 4 pertinent poses that we put to all of our guests. But Taryn, just so you know, we did have a similar question with Paul Feldwick recently. So if you check that episode out on we talk about sonic cues. So the final part of the interview is our 4 pertinent poses. I will split them down the middle again. So Trevor, if we come to you first, what advice would you give to your younger self?
I've actually heard this before, and it stumped me at first because I was like thinking, "Oh God, what would I say?" The thing is, my younger self was incredibly resilient, incredibly just like he was so strong, and he took knockbacks incredibly well, and he listened to what people were saying about him and saying about my work, and didn't take it personally, and funneled that back into works, and he was just incredibly just single-minded and could work with it. So there's not a hell of a lot I could say to my younger self. I don't think I could be that guy again. Do you know what I mean? That guy ran through walls and took it and kept going and kept coming. And I see it sometimes in a lack of other people where I just think you're not gonna make it because you're taking it all too personally, and you're thinking the whole world's against you, and it's not. It's like there's a big wide world out there, and if you're up for it, you can have it all. And I'm not being naive when I say that. So I couldn't say a hell of a lot to him. Just say keep it up.
Yeah, but there's great advice in that. And I think that's certainly a lesson that I know in my experience that creatives need to learn quite quickly, that it isn't personal. You need to fail fast and move on. And by fail, I mean if someone gives you feedback that something isn't quite right or an idea just hasn't really got any traction, then have another great idea.
Yeah, totally.
Number 2 then, Rania, if you could banish one thing from the industry, what would it be and why?
Well, I think Trev touched on it earlier, which is this kind of institutionalized thinking, it's just, which I think we are finally kind of definitely challenging, and there's definitely been a shift. But I think, just the ability to sort of think outside of our kind of old school thinking and confined thinking.
Well said. Very good. Number 3, any books that you would recommend? It feels unfair to only allow Trevor to field that one, but they don't have to be industry related, just for the record. They can be any.
Well, to be honest, Rania reads a lot more books, especially psychological books and books about the industry. So she could probably give you more relevant books. Mine were all like kind of like the usual, from Catcher in the Rye to all the usual books. I think Rania could give you a better assessment of books.
Well, to be honest, yeah, I do read a lot of books and sort of psychological and as well as sort of behavioral economics and stuff like that. But I think but it's a bit of a heavy read, to be honest with you. If it's quite a lot of data and kind of stuff like that, which to be honest, I'm not brilliant with that stuff myself. So if I can get through, I'm sure other people can. But it's the Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow. It's just that real solid understanding of how we make decisions and how our brains work, I think is important for anyone who is doing anything to do with trying to, change behavior or influence people, basically, because it really gives you a good insight and understanding into how we think and operate. And the chimp paradox is another good one as well, which is sort of what I found particularly interesting for me because I've got a very chattery brain. And I think for anybody who just wants, again, to understand their own brain and their own minds and how they can kind of better manage that as well. So I think they're two good ones.
Are we allowed to know what you've called your chimp?
Oh God! Actually, I don't think I did name my chimp.
Did you not?
I don't think I did. I was like, I probably was. You see, I don't follow instructions very well at all. Just that bit.
I've not read it. A couple of the team here have, and they've recommended I do a few too many times that I've started to take it personally, to be honest. Okay.
No, it's a good book. You'll enjoy it.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Amazing. Well, there are 3 great books, and Catcher in the Rye is one of my favourite, and it certainly hasn't come up before. I think Chimp Paradox did with Amy Keane, actually. Now
I'd add into it as well, which is it's written by a psychiatrist, but it's called Autodafé. It's a German psychologist that wrote this book, and it's one of the most mind-bending book I've ever read, and it's lived with me. But it's very hard to find, I'm afraid. But it's amazing book.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we'll try and include a link to that. And then we always dedicate every episode to someone, and we bestow or hospital pass that honour, depending on your view, to our guests in this instance, who have to give their reason why. So would you kindly dedicate this episode to someone? That can be an individual dedication each, or a joint dedication.
Oh, God. Ron, you can have this one.
Oh God, I know this. I did, I found this one quite difficult, but the only thing I don't know, it's a really, it's a tough one, to be honest with you, but I think for me, it would be dedicated to anyone who is even thinking about this industry on any level at all, and just really, if we can do it, we're both such misfits, really, in terms of not misfits as in, we're delinquents, but misfits as in neither of us fitted the mold of the industry, when we came into it. And I'd like to, for me, it'd be dedicated to anyone else who doesn't think maybe instinctively.
Well, that's a good one. I think that's a really good answer, Ron. All the misfits out there, this is for you. That's a good.
Yeah, this industry needs more misfits.
Yeah, so hopefully we're some inspiration. Yeah, if we can do it, you can.
Definitely.
I guess that's what we're trying to say.
We can bloody do it.
That's an absolutely wonderful dedication, just to echo Trevor's point, because this industry, this world needs more misfits. We need to be prouder of being misfits too.
I think they do all the best stuff, all the most intelligent, creative, surprising stuff. It's always come from the ones that you just think is a little bit mad, a little bit weird.
Yeah, well, funny enough, I don't think there's a right way of recruiting, really, but one of the things we focus on is asking how people are strange and how they're weird and how they're misfits. And we met a really talented young lady recently, and I just can't stop thinking. Every time I think about it, it makes me smile. But she was explaining to me how she finds too many peas on a plate overwhelming. And I totally understood her. I loved it. Oh. So as a final call to action, so we will list everything in the episode description. So we'll have Quiet Storm, we'll throw in some wonderful Haribo ads, links to Create Not Hate. So please do get involved and support that initiative if you can. Autodafé, Catcher in the Rye, Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, and the Chimp Paradox. How else can our listeners get more Rania and Trevor?
Oh wow, they could probably Google us. I think probably. We're both quite active, to be honest with you. We've done lots of articles and talks and stuff, and
yeah, I've done articles, talks for Can Lines, and done quite a few talks in here. I tried to blank them out of my head, but they're out there.
We'll find them.
Yeah,
we'll find them.
There's some stuff we can send you some more links if you wanted some more links to stuff that we've done.
Amazing. Well, listen, thank you so much, both of you, for joining us. It's been a real pleasure and a huge privilege to talk to you both.
No, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Absolute pleasure, Giles. You take care.
And finally, thank you to everyone listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do share it and review the podcast. We really value your support. Keep the questions and guest requests coming in. To get in touch, it's easy to find Gasp online. You can check out CTA Pod on Instagram, or just email hello@calltooaction.co.
I can't get no call to action. I can't get no call to action, but I try and I try. try, and I try. I can't get no call to action. Oh, I can't get no call to action. Yeah.